Hi, welcome to the first video in a series of writing little single-page React apps. We're going to get started on CodeSandbox, a platform for developing applications. And in this case, we're going to use React. So if you type in React new, you'll see that you'll be taken directly to CodeSandbox, where a little React app will be primed for you. You can see that right now there's an H1 and an H2 element. You can see the live preview. We're going to be making a little counter application. Counters are kind of like the hello world of React. So if we change our H1 over here to counter and hit save, you can see that CodeSandbox has taken our React template and built a little app for us over here. So right up here at the top, it chose the name for us. And if we don't like that, we can always just change this name to counter. Okay, so now we have a little counter app right here. And in fact, just for fun, we can go in here and start off our counter at 0 if you like. And what we'll do is we'll add a few buttons in here to make this number go up and down. It's helpful to talk for just a minute about what a React app is made up of. So if I were to open up the files, you could see at the top level, we're given a package.json file that's metadata about our program. It might be a good idea here to change the name and the description. A simple React counter might be good. That's package.json, so information about it. And you can see that React is brought in. It's a dependency because React is a JavaScript library. So this is how it's all brought in. And you can see a few more things here that is useful for CodeSandbox, none of which will concern us at the moment, but we'll probably by around the 5th video in the series when we start building React apps on the command line. But for right now, just change the name and the description, just, to keep things clean. There is an index.html like there is in just about all HTML type apps. The only thing that really concerns us right here is probably just changing the title. The rest of the index.html simply sets up an element whose ID here is root, and that's populated by the React library when index.js is run and the root element is discovered, and somehow or other this thing called an app is injected inside of the root element. Details don't actually concern us for now, but what's important is that this thing called app, which we bring in from the file app.js, is this thing we saw at the very beginning. So basically, anything that you return from the function app, where app is called a component, is what you're going to see rendered. For this first video, we're going to be doing all of our work inside of app.js, so I'll just make a little space right here. You might be interested in finding styles.css. That's where everything is centered, but we'll look more at styles in the second video. Okay, so React is made up of a number of components. The first component here is an app component. And right here, we're going to put in the value of a counter. Now, if you do have data in React, information, something like that, React wants you to store that information in what are known as state variables. So I'm going to make up a little variable called count. And variables in React always compared with setters, the function that will actually update them. We use the React function useState to give our state variable an initial value. That does need to be imported from React. So let's import useState from React to get the errors to go away. The counter's at 0. Now, this is the initial value of the counter. If I wanted that to be 5, I could make that be the initial value. And if I want to render the value of the variable, here it's count, I put that in curly braces. So right now you can see that if I were to update the state, right here, it immediately updates the count. React is, after all, reactive, so it responds to any changes to state variables that are rendered immediately. Now let's get a couple of buttons on the screen to both increment and decrement the counter. So let's add to our app, underneath our header, a couple of buttons. So we'll put in one button called increment, or let's call it up because up is more interesting of a name. And let's make one that says down. So we have an up, we have a down, 2 buttons up and down. If you want to put some space between them, remember to use CSS probably put a little bit of margins on your button, or put these in a flex container with a gap is another fun way to do things. Now, how do we get the up button to actually increase the value of the counter and vice versa? Well, that's done with giving the buttons attributes. The onClick attribute will be a function which is run whenever you click the button. And what do we want it to do? I think what we want this one to do is increment the counter. And I think for going down, we'll just on click, we'll call decrement. Okay. We do, of course, have to implement these two functions. These functions can be done right here. So to increment, what we want to do is increase the value of count, and then we'll want the same thing over here for decrement. We'll decrease the count. Now, the thing to know about React state variables is you can only set them via their setters. Okay, which one to do? You have to call the setters. There's no assigning directly to count. You have to invoke set counter. So we'd like over here to invoke set counter, and we want to increase the value of count by 1. Now, you could, it is possible to, say set counter count plus 1 here. You could say set counter count minus 1 here. And when all this is run, your up will increase the count, your down will not work because I should have said here minus 1, not equals 1. I can set count, and I have to say set counter. Okay, I'm getting pretty sloppy over here. Now the down button is working, the up button is working. You could directly put the value in there. It is generally preferred for you to make this as a function which takes in the old value of the state variable. So you're more likely to see things like this in practice. So here you can move up, here you can move down. And if you wanted to add a third button, say to reset the counter to 0, that's actually fun to do. We could make a button called reset. We can put in a function called reset, like so. And let's implement it over here. Function reset. And we'll say set counter, take the current value of the state over here and just replace with 0. Now we go up, now we go down. We can reset at any time to 0, down, reset. And there you go. And if you needed to do any little bit of styling whatsoever, you can go into styles.css. You can, for example, style your H1 to have, say, a background color of cyan. You can remove some of its margins. You can remove its top margin. And for fun, if you want your body to have no margin and no padding, it's just a little something that you could just, slide into here. I think the H1 needs a little bit, I think it needs a little bit of padding, don't you think? There we go. And now we have a nice little fun thing here. If you wanted to roll your buttons into a single element, you can too. Okay, so that was the first little example of using React. We didn't get deeply enough into React because we only wrote things in a single component. What we want to do next time is rather than making HTML buttons, it might be a good idea to actually turn these buttons into React components of their own. Things would look a little more React-y there, but I wanted to keep the first video quite short. So see you in the next one.